What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Movement Mindset powered by Station Athletics. I'm Chris Hardenberg, and today we're here with Nast Whitson. Before I start talking about Nast, just want to address the elephant in the room. We're not in our fancy podcast studio. We're in the women's gym. We had to make some, what should I call it, JJ? Office changes. So we should hopefully have a fancy one again in a couple of months. But you know what? We're just coming at it raw, like just raw from the gym. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Okay. Well, so this is Nast again. Nast coaches at our gym in Roseland.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have her on because she is what I would consider a subject matter expert in all things like lady parts. Pregnancy, she's the one to go to. So before we get into that, Nast, tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and how you got involved with us.
Okay. We're probably going to laugh a lot today.
We're going to have a good time.
We've been laughing already. My name is Nastron, or Nast for short. And like Chris said, I'm a coach in Roseland. And a little bit about me. I think that has transitioned quite a bit recently. But just a quick rundown is I'm a coach, a trainer, and I coach runners of all levels and also moms and moms-to-be. And I'm a doula as well. So I support moms literally at birth and postpartum. And so that's what I've been doing for a little while and what I'm still doing. And I would say what I have fallen in love with, what I enjoy, what has come to me recently is just helping people get out of pain. And whether that's running or in the birth world or postpartum is literally, I just don't like to see people in pain.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people do, but just helping people
JJ
feel
loves
better.
seeing people in pain. If you could all see his mustache.
I live for it.
You should insert a picture there. But yeah, that's me
Okay.
in a nutshell.
So I've known Nast for a long time.
10 years now, maybe?
Give or take. Yep.
That's crazy.
I'll let you kind of tell the story, but Nast just like wandered into Roseland. I like saw her name come up over the on the website like pipeline. I was like, I know who this is.
Her.
Dave on one of the podcasts was funny. He like gave me a hard time because then when you started coming in, I was like, where's Dave? And I was like badgering him to get
He's like,
into
I'm
the
doing
gym.
great, Chris.
So
Dave's great too.
So go through some of that. What brought you into Station Athletics? What made you even like come on staff? Stuff like that.
I actually have a funny story about that first
Great.
day at Station. But just to rewind a little bit, as you know, I'll share with the audience, we used to own a gym and we were primarily in Passaic County. We had a lot of people from Bergen County coming to the gym and we also lived out there. And then we sold the gym and Dave's dad needed help.
Mm-hmm.
And so we sold the gym, we moved. So our whole lives transitioned.
Yeah.
We had been in Hawthorne, New Jersey for quite some time. And we came back to Essex County, Roseland. And that was a big transition for me.
Sure.
I didn't realize I'm originally from Massachusetts. So originally from Dominican Republic. Grew up in.
Were you born in the DR?
I was born in the DR.
When did you move here?
I was like maybe 5 years old.
Is it like, and forgive me if it's not, but is it like your classic immigrant story where it's like, I didn't know any English? Like,
yeah, it was a classic
Crazy.
immigrant story. I had zero English. I only spoke Spanish. And quick side story, I was so afraid of going to school because I didn't know all the colors in English. And the color that I remember the most is the color brown.
Okay.
I just kept saying, marron, marron. And I was like yelling it and screaming, when you're like holding on to something and your parents are pulling you by the leg, come on, we have to go to school.
Yeah.
But yeah, knew zero English. And you pick it up when you're a kid, you pick it up really fast. But because of that, I was super quiet, very shy. And basically they were concerned for me. I was in special classes because I didn't talk. And now look at me. Can't shut me up. No.
So I actually wrestled with a guy from Panama. He was originally from Panama. And so I'm curious if this is for you. And then I promise everyone we'll get back on track.
Yeah.
So he moved, I want to say he was maybe 10 or something. And so he told me that like he still will like hear English and like translate it into Spanish in his head kind of to like understand everything. But you were so much younger. I'm curious, would you still say Spanish is like your first language, or is it vice versa now?
So technically Spanish was my first language.
Well, yeah.
So when somebody asks me, technically speaking, yes, it was, but it's not how I think anymore.
Yeah, that's
I
what I mean.
think in English.
Okay.
However, when I go to Dominican Republic, the motherland, I start thinking in Spanish again.
Yeah.
And so then I come back here, and sometimes, and this, I know this happens to a lot of people, you say something and you're like, was that English or Spanish?
Yeah.
Or you don't even realize it until somebody points it out. And it's a very odd thing. I think that's happening more and more as I get older. I know it happens to my mom.
Okay.
Recently, she started speaking to Dave and I, just in Spanglish, we call it. And she didn't even realize that she was speaking in Spanish, but Dave understood. You know, he's been around it for so long and he's nodding his head. And especially if you enunciate, he totally is like, oh, I can pick up the gist. And so it was so funny.
But I've heard some of that DR Spanish is like,
oh yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot of slang.
yes.
There's formal Spanish and there's domesticated Spanish. And yes, there's a lot of, we call them expressions. A lot of expressions that we like to say. And if I told you the literal translation, you'd be like, what?
Yes.
That's not even a thing.
Yeah. Like I taught high school at Roseland Park. So it was a heavy Hispanic
oh yeah,
population.
they speak a lot of Spanish there.
And they were just like, yeah, those Dominicans, they leave parts of words off.
Yes.
They like make stuff up. It's like,
I can totally agree with that. Yep. I'm from Dominican Republic and I speak Spanish, and sometimes I have a hard time understanding my own people.
yeah.
A lot of times they'll say, you know, they know right away, they can tell by my accent that I didn't grow up there. But it is cool to be able to keep up and understand, you know, and a lot of times it's my own cousins, it's my family, my mom, you know, uses a lot of slang. Sometimes it's inappropriate and people ask for translation. Of course, those are the words that my husband, Dave, soaks up. And I'm like, do not repeat that. He goes, but it's just an expression. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, this is really offensive. Don't say it.
Yeah.
Of course, that's the first word he wants to say. But no, so now I think in English.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to circle back, so from the Dominican Republic, you were talking about, you sold your gym. It was hard to move back.
Yes.
So
yeah. So now we're in a new city. We've moved, and it's interesting because we lived there for a good year before I finally started looking for another gym. And I was like, wow, I'm in a completely new city. Where do I go? What do I do? Like, where do I go grocery shopping? Where do I find things? And the first thing I wanted to do was find a gym. I know the importance of, you know, just my health, and even though I'm getting over a cold, community, that is all super important to me. So I remember hearing from Shaka, actually, who's one of the coaches,
shout out Shaka,
in Roseland as well. You know, he was dropping into a gym in Roseland. He's like, hey, you should come out, come check it out, take a class. And I remember I reached out. Actually, no, I stopped by and I met Marquand. There was Haley. I met so many people the first day, and it was just really cool to, you know, walk into a new space, and also nerve-wracking when you have been in your own gym space for 13 plus years and then walking into a new space as a newbie again. It was a little scary.
Yeah.
So the funny story that I was going to share before was I finally came to my first trial class. I think it was on a Tuesday, actually. And it was so funny because the coach was like, hey, have you ever done this before? This fitness? And I was like, yes, I have. But if you see something, please let me know.
Yeah.
I didn't share anything about my background. I didn't say, I don't like to. I was like, just coach me. I'm just a member here. I want to get the full experience. And so he was like, great. Do you know anybody here? And I was like, well, a friend of mine stops by every once in a while, but honestly, no, I don't really know anybody here. No sooner did I say that, it was like maybe 3 minutes after he asked that question, my friend Shaka walks in.
Mm.
And I was like, dude, what are you doing here? And he was like, whoa, what are you doing here? We gave big hugs. And the coach was like, oh, see, you do know somebody.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I guess I do. I said, but I don't know anybody else. No sooner did I say that, about 1 minute later, you walked in and you were like, Nast. I go, Chris. I gave you a hug, and I go back to class to the warm up, and the coach just looks at me and he's like, you're a liar. You literally know everybody. I'm like, no, I promised you. I didn't tell anybody I was coming in here. They had no idea. I just came in,
That's
and they
funny.
also happened to come in this day,
Right.
which was really cool. It just made me feel, when you know somebody, it just makes you feel more at home,
Yeah.
which was awesome. So, yeah.
So then Nast is a member for a little while.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then after that, I don't remember if Quan asked you or I asked you.
Yeah.
It was like, but it was basically like, hey, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
do you want to coach some
You wanna coach?
classes?
I was like, yeah, sure. I think my year is coming up.
Cool.
Yeah. For coaching, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is really exciting. But yeah, one of you guys approached me, and it was just like a natural fit. Like I felt really comfortable right away. So I love coaching. But again, coaching in a new space is a little nerve-wracking.
Well, especially because when you're you mentioned it, right? When you're used to being in the same space for what, 12 years?
Yeah.
It's like you said, it allows you to kind of identify with the new person
Mhm.
way more easily. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say. Because
I was there.
exactly. It's like, oh, I even have these like new person butterflies.
Mhm.
So that's how you got involved with us. Now you mentioned at the beginning, um, to summarize, I'm struggling with my words, JJ. 3 main populations, it sounds like you like to serve. Generally people in pain,
Mhm.
running,
Yeah.
and pregnant postpartum.
Yes.
So let's talk about the second two.
Yeah.
Let's start with running. What made you want to be the running person?
So, interestingly enough, runners and moms are constantly in pain or discomfort.
Okay.
Not, I can't say for everybody. Obviously, I don't want to put that on people. But when did I get into running? Probably when I was little and running away from my mom. And she took the chancla and she was like, "Ah."
Yeah.
I just became a really fast runner because of it. I'd like to say I'm kidding, but I'm not. She also has a good arm. So we're Dominican. We all grew up playing baseball.
It's like, have you seen those like videos on Instagram of like it's like the Dominican or Hispanic Olympics, and it's like the shoe throwing.
Yes. I can't tell you how many people sent that to me. It was so funny.
And you're like, this was my house. This is enough.
This is my house.
Yeah.
Except I was fast. I ran away. But then I had to come back at some point.
Yeah.
No, so I started running really young. And then this goes back to like playing sports. So my first sport was actually softball. I wasn't kidding when we played baseball and softball.
Mhm.
And running just came easier for me. But I, like a lot of runners, I experienced some injuries.
Sure.
My first major injury was when I was 17. And I was a senior heading into college. And I don't know if I think I sprained my hip
Okay.
when I was doing dance. That came back 2 years later to haunt me in the long jump. I was midair. I don't know if you know, in long jump, you go into like an inverted C and then you come back around. And my hip came out of place
Oof.
in the air.
Oh.
Then I landed on it, so it got jammed back.
Oh.
But because I competed for a D1 school, they don't take lightly when you don't put forth results, especially in championship time. So this was a pentathlon indoor championships. We needed points, and we had one more event. And I thought for sure I was out. I was done. My hip hurt so badly, but I had so many endorphins, so much adrenaline, everything going at the same time. And my coach at that time was like, "You're not bailing. You are running the 800." And I was like, I can barely walk.
Yeah.
So the trainers, I don't know what they did, but I remember we were in Rhode Island and they somehow put me back together and they're like, all right, good luck. Bye. There you go. Just go
Go
run
get him, kid.
2 laps really fast. Actually, the indoors 4 laps. And so I remember running. I don't remember really much else. I just remember being in so much pain. Got the points. We did well. And I suffered going back to school. We had to hop in a van. All those bumps really hurt. And I finally basically crawled into the trainer's office. And the trainer, I remember saying, she's like, why did you run? And I was like, because basically I was threatened
Yeah.
to everything I'd worked hard for. They were going to kick me off the team. And that was a real threat. And because of that injury, that was the foundation to literally most of what I do now and why I help people in running get out of pain. Because when I said I was in pain, the person who I trusted the most didn't listen.
Right.
And it was pretty awful. So at that time I was 18, 19 years old, and I should have advocated for myself even more so. But, there's a lot going on. There's a lot at stake, scholarships, all sorts of stuff for my family. It would have been taken away in one decision. And so I couldn't do that. I couldn't have that. But I had to go see all sorts of specialists at that point in orthopedic. I had to do 6 months of rehab 3 times a week, 6 to 7 a.m., just to come back to baseline.
Yeah.
And then out of pure rage, I literally just decided to keep going to PT. I hired a private coach because I was going to come back the following season with a vengeance. But in that time frame, I went through depression. I was going to quit. There was just a lot that happened from just that one injury.
Yeah.
And the doctor at the time was like, you're going to have this injury for the rest of your life. Like, this is something that I didn't need surgery.
Okay.
But he basically said, you need to keep your hip flexors, core, and pelvic floor strong forever. And, it's like 20 years later and he's not wrong.
Right.
So to this day, I still get issues on that side. I still get some pretty, tight hip flexors, abdominal pain on that side. Menstrual cycles are affected by it. So yeah. So when I say it was just like a little thing that became a big thing later on, that's really where my passion for coaching runners started at the time. It was because I was angry.
Yeah. Sometimes what gets us into what we do is instances like that, where it's like, I had X, Y, or Z happen to me and I didn't have someone, to use your words, advocating for me.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't want that to happen to anyone else. And, I played college sports. JJ played college sports, especially
Where did you play, JJ?
What did you play again? LaSalle?
Sales.
The Sales. I knew it was something like that.
Weird name.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So especially when you're a freshman, sophomore, it's like what coach says is like, all right, like this is what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially because it's like, you're an adult, but you're not. You're a kid.
Yeah.
And you step into, and I don't know if you guys experience this, but like you step into a room or a track or a field and you're a freshman, like unless you're a freak athlete, there's a big difference between seniors and freshmen when it comes to the
100%.
college level.
Yeah.
And like I wrestled. And so, and I'm sure JJ felt this in lacrosse. It maybe is different in track. Not only do you see that in how things go, but like you physically feel it. Like I'm sure JJ, when you got laid out by your first senior, it was probably like, oh dear God, what have I done?
Thankfully, I was a meaty boy my freshman year, so I didn't get hit a lot. But yeah, no, the slashes were a lot harder.
Yeah.
They hurt,
Big
right?
wake-up call.
My nephews play lacrosse and some of those bruises, slashes, is that what they're called?
Yeah, you leave games with bruises all up your body.
Yeah. And so it's like, man, it's tough. It's crazy to think that it's like you're someone who's in a position. And I understand to the extent that like college coaches are paid to score points essentially. But at the same time, it's like you're also paid to mentor kids. And so like, it stinks that it was like, listen, if it was solely your choice, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But if it was like I literally cannot run and it's like, I don't give a what, like get out on the track. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. And they, that's why I don't always, I know D1 is like oh,
Yeah.
I don't always recommend D1. In fact, I rarely recommend
Sure.
D1 anymore. If you want your athletes to be treated as a whole person for long term, D1 is not always the way to go.
Right.
I think it's great to experience it, to be part of a program like that, but there's phenomenal D2, D3 programs, and they just care about you so much more. Maybe, you don't get all the funding as you would in certain programs. And plus now, I don't know if you've been seeing, the NCAA has made it so much harder to make D1 levels. They've shortened their roster, but there's more money.
Yes.
And so,
because kids can get paid now.
yeah, because they can get paid. But I don't know how I feel about that. It's so much more competitive. It's so much more cutthroat. If you're hurt, they'll find someone to replace you in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we don't. I have a whole like spiel with that, but to keep this podcast on track.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's running. What got you into the pregnancy game?
Yeah, so pregnancy was not on my radar. That was in 2014. One of our clients, my friend Jess, she came up to me and she goes, "Hey, Ness, I'm pregnant. What do I do?" And I was like, "Hey, Jess, congratulations. I have
don't
no
know."
idea." I was like, "Exactly. What do we do?"
Yeah.
The reason I turned the question around on her is because she was a nurse.
Oh, really?
And she's a cardiac nurse. She's like one of the top cardiac nurses in her hospital in our region at the time. And so for her to be asking me for advice, I was like, girl, I have no idea. I had no idea how to answer her. And so, instead of like pushing her off, I was like, well, let me find out. But the interesting thing is when I went to go find out, there was nothing. And this is not that long ago, right? This is 2014, 2013, somewhere around that time.
You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I would assume a lot of the literature stuff around that time was like, don't move. Like, it's like, take it easy, go for a walk. Like,
Yep. Go stretch.
Yeah.
Sit at home.
Yep.
Basically, don't do as much exercise.
Yep.
And it was so interesting. So when I went online, I was just looking for anything, looking for programs, looking for advice. And I found some chiropractors. Like I remember finding somebody in Boston. I found somebody in Washington, D.C. who put out some blogs on, hey, I have my clients do just a little bit of lifting. We usually use dumbbells. But mostly they do like mommy and me classes or yoga were the most recommended at the time. A lot of breath work, but some swimming. But really, I had such a hard time finding anything on being in a gym setting. And that's when Jess actually sent me a link to, there's a company called BirthFit, and Dr. Lindsay Matthews at that time had put out a blog from California. And it was essentially how she started helping people in her gym and in some other spaces as well. And she's a chiropractor. That's her background. And so I reached out. I was like, hey, I'm in New Jersey. How do I learn more about this? And she goes, believe it or not, there's somebody that's actually heading to Hoboken in like a week from that time. And she's putting on a seminar, but she goes, I think it's sold out. And I was like, it is not sold out.
Not to me.
It is not sold out. I am showing up, but thank you so much for the info. So of course I tell Dave, and I was like, I voluntold Dave. I'm like, hey, we're going to a seminar. He's like, what? I'm like, we both need to be there. He goes, didn't she just say it was sold out? And I was like, it's not sold out. We're in cash. They're not going to turn down cash. I don't know what I was thinking.
Just cash in a bag, drops it on the table.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. It was like a little sketch, but that's okay. So we show up. I barely knew where to go. I knock on the door. It already started. And I was like, hey, I'm here for the seminar. And they're like, you are? I'm like, I've brought gifts.
You're not on the list.
No one's going to turn that down.
Yeah.
So they let us in, which was so cool. And that seminar really changed me. I was like, I need to show everybody what they can do, their potential. We need to move when we're pregnant.
Right.
Like everything we're hearing is so wrong. I'm like, our ancestors, I remember calling my mom. I was like, Mom, what did grandma do? they used to work on farms. And so they would work on a farm, essentially they would be super pregnant, go under a tree, birth a baby, and,
Get back to work.
get back to work. I was going to say that, but no, they took a little bit of rest. But movement.
You can have lunch.
This guy. Movement was so healing.
Yeah.
And just everything I had learned. I also have a microbiology background. And so just, what we learned in terms of like movement, blood, oxygen, anatomy, physiology, I was like, it just all makes sense. Why aren't we talking about this more? And so because I was curious about it and I constantly ask questions, I don't just like take things as they are.
Yeah.
I'm like, why aren't we talking about this? And then I learned when you start asking questions, sometimes people get upset.
Yeah.
Sometimes you shake things up a little bit. And so I took that information and, I reached out to the CEO of BirthFit again. And I was like, listen, I need to get started. I don't know what you do with this information, but I need to do this. And at the time she was like, well, I have like 4 other girls that are interested. And I was like, I'll fly out to meet you. Like I'm serious about this.
Yeah.
So I did. We booked a flight. I had some other stuff to do in California, but basically made it to LA and I met her, made sure she was real. And I was like, I want to affiliate. Like I want to do this out on the East Coast. And there was no one else doing anything like it. So
Interesting.
essentially, I started up in New Jersey. I ran the entire Northeast, joined their seminar staff. So it was cool. We got to travel around, go to different gyms and studios around the nation and internationally. And we got to teach these methods. And it was really a cool new concept. But it just felt like we knew it all along.
Yeah.
It just felt very right.
Yeah.
And then from that, just started, I noticed that I was traveling so much that I was neglecting people in my own gym and my
Okay.
own home state. Side note. So I was like, you know what? I need to stop this here and I need to come back home and help my own people, my friends, my family, and share this in New Jersey.
Okay.
New Jersey at the time, if I'm just going to launch, New
Yeah,
Jersey had some of the worst pregnancy stats in the nation.
Interesting.
And so in terms of like cesarean rates, healing postpartum, postpartum depression, so on and so forth, and especially in our region.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I guess I was planted here for a reason. So I have some work to do.
Cool. It's funny you say that you were planted here for a reason. I recently did a podcast interview with a friend of mine, Jeff Harmon. Long story short is he runs a nonprofit called My Impossible and is going to be doing a Mount Kilimanjaro climb in a wheelchair. He's in a wheelchair.
Wow.
So
Oh my gosh.
he basically said what led him to those things. He called them divine breadcrumbs.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds like you
love
had
that.
many divine breadcrumbs to
So
bring
many.
into the things that you do. And I know this is a loaded question,
Excuse me.
but and it's a lot of information. So I'm hoping that you can kind of like pare it down for
Sure.
our audience. But it's also not a mistake that we're in the women's gym.
Yeah, I know. This is great.
This is a place where the community here is really cool and very unique,
Yeah.
even within our organization, because it's the only one with the childcare area. Like our main demo here is moms.
Moms. Yeah.
And what's cool is like you have moms who are in the thick of it at various ages, and then moms who are out of it, helping the moms who are in the thick of it.
Yes.
But it's something I've noticed, even like to use Roseland as an example. Like there was at one point, like I felt like 5 or 6 women at that gym were pregnant at the same time.
Yeah.
And
Like
so
currently.
yes. And so
Yes.
it's like a lot of these women who are in our facilities understand the concept of like, I love this. I
Mhm.
feel really good when I do it.
Yep.
Mentally and physically. I'm not giving it up,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to do right by my baby too.
Yes.
And so if you had to talk to some of our members and pare it down into a couple, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4 things that you're like, this is how you should scale. This is what you should look for. Like,
Mhm.
how would you advise these women on how to adjust and approach their fitness so that they can still do what they love, but
Yeah.
also keep their baby safe?
Yeah. So that is a loaded question.
Yes, I know, because I've talked to you before.
Where do I start? So first and foremost, I just love that we're having this conversation.
Sure.
First and foremost, like I said, 10 years ago, this wasn't a thing. And so much has changed where more people are open to talking about pregnancy and the gym space.
Yeah.
Or pregnancy in the gym space. And so I'm really glad that the culture has shifted. So I think our first priority with moms, especially from like a trainer professional perspective, is making sure that mom feels safe.
Okay.
So safety is always first, but it's not even like safety how we view safety. It's that she feels safe and essentially that she feels good. So one of my top questions I always ask is, well, how do you feel? Does that feel good or does that not feel good? So recently I had someone come up to me. I wasn't coaching class. I was on the side just doing some lifting. And she at the time was 22 weeks pregnant. There was another coach in class and she stopped and she was like, hey, should I do this movement? I think it was something like running, toes to bar, or wall walks or something like that.
Sure.
And I was like, how do you feel? And she's like, honestly, I don't feel really good about doing that movement. And I was like, great. So let's do something that does feel good.
Yeah.
So I think she continued with the run. She said she loves running. It still felt good for her. And then I can't remember exactly, but let's say she did like slam balls instead of toes to bar.
Sure.
Right. And I just thought it was awesome because the coach that was coaching was a male coach. And instead of me answering right away, I said, hey, what would you do? And it was actually Dan. So shout out to Dan.
Shout out, Dan.
Yeah, shout out Dan. And Dan just gave the best advice. He's like, if it feels good, continue with it. If it doesn't, let's do this instead.
Great.
And so it was just so awesome that he felt confident and comfortable enough to offer that advice, but just continuously asking questions, right? Just because there's a movement in there that we don't deem safe or appropriate, doesn't mean that it's not safe and appropriate, right? It could just be ineffective for that season that you're in.
Sure.
So what are some of those movements? So when we're in pregnancy, we don't say that these movements are bad. We just say it's just not effective right now. So anything that is extreme flexion and extension. So I already mentioned toes to bar. Even for some people, American swings. Anything that causes any sort of like what's called coning or tenting or doming. We can talk about that in a minute too.
Yeah.
So diastasis, anything that causes dysfunction. If you're peeing yourself, right? That's a thing. You know, a lot of times we allow for these things to happen. So we're just like, oh, she just peed herself a little bit. Well, just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal.
Right.
Right. We don't want to continue with dysfunction. Right. Just because someone else did it doesn't mean we ought to keep doing that. Essentially, when you have dysfunction and you continue through the dysfunction, you're teaching your body that it's okay to continue operating in dysfunction.
Right.
And so it's just noticing, just being aware.
Okay.
And encouraging moms to continue being aware of themselves. So a lot of that starts with education. It starts with us, you know, gently pointing things out and saying, hey, did you know that you have a little bit of coning in your belly? And it almost looks like, it does look like a little ridge forms on your belly. A lot of times they just don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Things like that.
Okay.
Now, in terms of lifting is a big one.
Okay.
A lot of people are like, Nast, I love my Olympic lifts. I want to continue with all the lifting. And I'm like, okay, great. Then let's continue with your lifts. You know, we did have a saying, some people still do have a saying, we try not to lift more than 80% of our 1 rep maxes. Now, does that change? Yeah. Some people shouldn't be lifting more than 50% of their 1 rep max. Some people, maybe 90% of the 1 rep max. It's all relative to that athlete, to that person. Why? Why do we want to be careful? Well, one of the biggest reasons is because we have something running through our body called relaxin. It's exactly what the name implies. It's a hormone, and essentially it relaxes the joints. We need relaxin. Relaxin is not bad. I feel like it's gotten this bad rap. It's like a bad word right now. Relaxin usually comes on the most between your first and second trimester, and again, right before birth. Rightfully so. We want all of our joints to be loosey-goosey before we give
Joints
birth.
got to stretch.
They got to stretch. If they don't stretch, talk about pain.
Yeah.
Right? And so it just helps us. It helps us with so many other things too, like blood pressure regulation that a lot of people don't know. But the main thing is it helps relax the joints. So if you're lifting more than 50, 60, 70% of your 1 rep maxes on loose joints, that's what's dangerous.
Yeah.
So relaxin itself is not dangerous. Relaxin in the presence of heavy loads when you're super pregnant, that's what's dangerous.
Yeah, because the main thing that you need to do when you're lifting a heavy load is to brace.
Brace and
it's-
stabilize.
Yes, and it's
Yeah.
way hard to brace and stabilize when
Exactly.
it's like for those of you that are listening, it's like as if you were trying to do something on like a boat, right? Like your base is not stable.
100%.
And so now it's
Yeah.
like, okay, my joints are not stable and I'm going to go for a new 1 rep max.
Totally.
Might not be the best idea.
I mean, imagine if you're not pregnant and I'm like, hey, clean this weight. It's 80% of your 1 rep max on this tiny little plank.
Yes.
And you're
yes.
unstable.
Yeah.
Is that going to feel good? Probably not.
Probably
You're
not.
probably going to compensate. You're probably going to catch it all weird and wonky and you could get hurt. And so that's the thing. Ain't nobody got time to get hurt when you're pregnant. In fact, it's a great time to recalibrate and move well.
Yeah.
Move at the highest standards is what I like to say. And so, yeah. And then the other thing too is postpartum. If you're breastfeeding, you still have a ton of relaxin running through your body. A lot of people don't know that. And that also makes it more difficult to lose weight as well. So I tell people, hey, I know you're trying to lose weight, but are you still breastfeeding? Let me explain or educate you on what is going on in your body. And so that's also why I like to say, when you don't honor that postpartum period, that
Yeah.
healing, it could be detrimental. And not just necessarily within the first 1 to 2 years postpartum, it could also show up, we're finding, in perimenopause and menopause. So if you don't take the time to honor your body and heal properly, it's going to come out somewhere.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but that's why I'm here.
Yeah. So 2 main things you said there was, okay, you know, it sounds very like, what the heck does that mean? Listen to my body. But
Mm-hmm.
I listen, I've never been a woman. So, but I would, it's 2025, JJ, you never know. I've never been a woman. But seeing my wife go through pregnancy,
Yeah.
it's like,
I remember.
you're very in tune to what's going on almost instinctually. So it's
Yeah.
what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And then, like you said, there's parameters. And so that's why that's always number one. But number two is like, you probably shouldn't be lifting real heavy. Like
Yeah.
80%, use 80% as your cap. Hey, if you feel good, maybe you go a little bit
Yeah, go
heavier.
for it.
If you don't feel good, go lighter. But like, again, general rule of thumb, probably shouldn't go above that range.
Yeah. I mean, you could, again, like I've worked with some elite lifters before, power lifters, Olympic lifters that have come and said, hey, this doctor said, don't be lifting that, but this is literally like 60% of my 1 rep max. And this is what they do as a profession. That's a little bit different.
Load's also relative.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So it really depends on finding someone who understands, what they're putting their body through, and then also someone that can help educate them. Not all, practitioners, they're not bad people. They're just taught, safety first.
Right.
And let's not put someone in risk. In fact, their risk, they try to bring it so far low that a lot of times we miss out on, hey, it's okay if you go to the gym. It's okay if you lift weights. In fact, it's recommended that we lift weights. I mean, when you leave the hospital and you're postpartum, you still need to lift that carrier and a baby.
Yeah.
That alone could be 15 to 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And if you're not practicing that during pregnancy, I mean, that's going to feel so heavy. And again, the risk of getting hurt goes up.
Yeah.
So we need to practice for all the things: picking up baby, putting down baby, holding baby, lifting ourselves up, right? But you said something that I thought was really cool and really important. You said tuning in, like when Tiffany was learning to tune in. So a lot of times when women become pregnant for the first time, they're not tuned in. Not all of them, but some of them.
Sure.
And so pregnancy is an opportunity to tune in. So we like to say, hey, like I was talking about this before, let's recalibrate. Let's focus on moving at the highest standard possible. Oftentimes I'll recommend, let's journal. If you've never journaled before, this is another opportunity for you to tune into your body. What is it doing? And then also listen if baby is moving or when they move. Like after you exercise, tune in for 30 minutes. Did baby move a lot? Like what did you notice?
Sure.
Right? This does come into play during birth. We see it all the time. And I hear it all the time. Like, hey, Nas, I'm so glad that I've been journaling and understanding what's been going on in my body, because when it came time for birth, I knew that something was up because I've been tuning in. And so, yeah, that word is really important. A lot of times I think we're running with our hair on fire, a million miles an hour. And then pregnancy just, I mean, it's 10 months for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, it causes us to intentionally tune in and slow down and check in. And to be honest, we don't talk about postpartum a lot, but postpartum is no different.
It's so funny you say that, because how I was going to transition was like, okay, we got 2 decent nuggets for pregnancy, but I feel like now it's, I don't want to say easy, but it's much easier to find information on how to exercise while being pregnant. I mean, even to the effect, like when Riley and Sayla were born, my 2 kids, the OBGYN was like, you can exercise, just don't do anything new. Like if you're used to coming into the gym and CrossFitting, cool. But if you're, but then it's he or she was like, but don't go run a marathon, right? Your body's not used to doing that. But what I feel like, and I remember talking to some of the women at Roseland, the part that's not talked about enough to me is postpartum. And the reason why I say that is, in my experience, is because it's like, hey, they say like, don't do X, Y, or Z for 6 weeks. You know, after you're cleared by the doctor, good luck.
Yes.
And it's like,
Oh, gosh.
whoa, wait a minute. There's a lot that's still going on physically,
Yes.
and even not as much physically, but mentally as well. Like I was talking to one of the women in Roseland, and she was like having a moment.
Yeah.
And I was like trying to like, you'll get back, but it's because these women are used to being in shape.
Yeah.
They're used to
That's all they've known their whole
they're
lives.
used to feeling good and looking good.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool, now I can finally do this again. And things aren't moving right. I can't lift as heavy. This pooch isn't going away.
Yeah.
It becomes like a real mental game.
Yeah.
So why don't you speak on postpartum a little bit and maybe touch on both the physical and mental sides?
Yes. I do want to address another thing though, because you mentioned that don't try anything new during pregnancy. And this goes for postpartum too. We want to train in all planes of motion and all energy systems in pregnancy. So sometimes that might mean doing some new things.
Sure.
I understand, don't go run a marathon. Like,
Yeah, he was
don't
basically
pick up
saying
a
like,
new
don't do anything extreme.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, we want to crawl. We want to, all planes of motion. We want to do rotational movements. We want to go frontwards, backwards. We want to go short, fast sprints, long aerobic. Why? Because birth happens in all planes of motion.
Yeah.
Like I might have somebody on all fours with the legs sticking out for 45 minutes, right? That's not easy work.
Right.
If she didn't train for that, then, you know, it's not going to be easy. Birth is not easy. Let's just be clear on that. But when we train in all planes of motion, it doesn't just help our birth. I know because I attend a bunch of births, but it helps us in postpartum as well. And so, yeah, you mentioned, I love that. And I'm being super sarcastic there. I don't love the whole, hey, let's give birth and then we're not going to see anybody for 6 weeks. And then you come back and, oh, you're cleared to go train right away.
Yes.
And it's like, you are not cleared to train right away. You are, they're experts, but so much happens in that time. First, it would be great to have a well visit at 3 weeks postpartum, 4 weeks postpartum. Midwives are really great at that. So I'm giving shout out to midwifery. It resurged. There was a resurgence in midwifery again during the pandemic. And it's just great to see so many more midwifery practices, specifically in New Jersey. Very, very excited about that. And so one of the things we can focus on, let's just talk about diastasis.
Let's do it.
Okay. So I know we were talking about this, and diastasis is basically when the rectus abdominis muscles become separated. So you have this collagen structure in the middle. It's called the linea alba. And when it's no longer able to stabilize, or it's just not able to stabilize properly or maintain the proper tension and pressure, it has to separate. So all women that are pregnant, 100% of women in their third trimester have diastasis, that's separation. Some other stats, 60% of women have diastasis 6 weeks postpartum. And I think the newest stat is 33% of women have it 12 months postpartum. So this is something that we obviously definitely need to talk about.
Yeah.
Definitely need to focus on. And if you're a trainer and or a coach that works with women, it's important that we know this. Why is it important? Well, if it's not dealt with properly. So for example, you have that separation and you go and start doing crunches. Essentially, you're telling your body, hey, it's okay to keep that open hole in this area, to keep that separation. We don't want to tell the body to do that. We want to tell the body it's okay to heal. So instead of doing crunches or sit-ups, toes to bar, American swings, we recommend working on the core 360 degrees, working on something called intra-abdominal pressure. So what does that look like? That could be farmer carries, odd object carries, sled push, sled pull, lateral, forward. Again, going back to practicing multiple planes of motion, different energy systems, different kinds of carries on one arm, two arms, so on and so forth. I mean, if you think about it, a baby is an odd object. They're squirming around, especially as they grow. So we're practicing for real life there. Now, there are different movements and different progressions that I take people through. I can't take credit. This is a method called DNS, Dynamic Neuromuscular Stabilization. And they're based out of the Czech Republic. And it basically just takes a look at babies, their developmental sequences. And I don't know if you know this, but all babies are born with diastasis.
Yes.
All people, men and women, are born with diastasis. And so the developmental sequences that we go through help heal our diastasis. So crawling, for example, is super, super important. And it helps so many other functions, but diastasis is one of them. It helps close it.
Yeah.
So the idea is if you closed your diastasis before when you were an infant, why can't we do it again when we're adults? And going through some of these developmental sequences again. So that's really like the physical aspect of, postpartum. But then you mentioned the mental aspect. That is a whole nother. And I just don't think we address it enough. We don't talk about it enough. I wish we did.
Because it's not easy. I mean,
No.
the mental aspect of life in general, not even just around postpartum, but training, stress. You
Totally.
can't touch it. You can't feel it. You can't put your finger on it. You can't be like, oh, here. So I put the stim here, right?
Yeah.
And so it is way, and it's also different. And again, I'll use this woman as an example. She might have had weeks where it was like she was totally understanding. I'm getting back to it.
Yeah.
And then one day it just hits when it's like you're doing your favorite movement or whatever the case may be, and you can't friggin' do it. And then I don't think this, but then she was like, I'm just fat. And it's like, no, it's like, you're getting back. Like, take your time. So so why don't you touch on that?
It's cool that you supported her, though. I don't think that men realize how important it is to how their words are so important, especially as a coach, a trainer, a husband, a dad. What you guys say, it matters.
Right.
It's so important. So just encouraging her to stay in it, be in it. It's just really cool that you were there for her. And so, yeah, man, I mean, you nailed it. It's hard.
Yeah.
And it could come at any time. That's the hardest part.
It's
like
lurking
one day,
around the corner, JJ.
literally.
Yeah.
One day you could feel amazing and another day you could feel like absolute crap.
Yep.
Right? So one day you have a ton of relaxin, another day it might be low. One day, you're breastfeeding, everything's coming in great, and another day you can barely get any milk. It can change from day to day. It could change based on stress. It could change based on the weather, based on so many aspects. If baby's sick, right? If something happened at work, if there was a death in the family, if there was some sort of trauma, if you twisted weird and your body's hurting. I mean, our bodies are so amazing. They do heal. And it's just such a cool thing to observe. But yeah, it's like patience, right? Patience is really hard. And so just continuing to have the conversation, like educating moms, like, hey, this is what is happening in your body. This is what you're going through. But what's cool is that, hey, from 0 to 3 months, this is what's happening. From 3 months to 6 months, this is what's happening. 6 to 9 months, so on and so forth. We do have labels and names like co-regulation period, regulation period, where we show mom like, hey, this is what you can expect. It's not going to happen linear. It's probably going to be like this, actually. But just setting mom up for success and telling her, this is probably what you can expect at this time. Don't be alarmed.
Yeah.
Which is why, I mean, you said it. I don't know if it was before the podcast, but just having, or during the podcast, but just having older women, older moms that you can look to and just glean on and gain encouragement. Not necessarily war stories, because sometimes that happens too. Sometimes,
Yes.
one of my biggest pieces of advice, especially for pregnant women, is be mindful of who you're around.
Right.
Be careful what you take into your eye gate and your ear gate. That is so important, because sometimes those war stories can cause fear.
Yeah.
And fear causes tension. And we don't want more tension. We have enough of that on our own, right? We have enough worry. Just right now, let, tomorrow take care of itself. Right now, just do what you can with what you have right now. But ask for help.
Yes.
And ask for help from someone who is wise, who will encourage you, maybe not sugarcoat it per se, but someone that can help guide you. I find that is super, super, super important. And also just, have resources. That's another thing too, is I might not know all the answers. I have a research background, so I like to look things up, but I have a lot of really smart friends.
Sure.
And so if I don't know something, I'm like, hey, why don't we contact this person? I just gave somebody a lactation consultant, phone number the other day. And then like last week, I gave somebody a pelvic floor PT in their region. So I just have a lot of resources.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly giving out names, books, information. Like, here you go. This is an awesome book. They know this book tells so much more than what I can share with you.
Sure.
Right. So I don't know if I answered your question. I think that's, postpartum is really tricky, but I just want to encourage moms to ask for help. In other cultures, so in like some of my cultures, it's a village.
Yeah.
And so women don't necessarily ask for permission to come over. They just come over.
Right.
And they clean your house. Somebody holds baby while you bathe or take a shower. They cook you food, and they usually cook some sort of broth or collagen. And they just take care of you. They just take care of the mother. Whereas here, I feel like it's so isolating.
Yeah.
And part of it is we live far away from each other. Part of it is we don't want to bother anybody. But I tell people, bother them, call them up. And people just don't know. They just don't know what to do. So I already said a few things there. Cook them a meal. Ask them if you can come clean. Ask them if they need help with baby. Ask them if you can bring them a cup of coffee.
Sure.
More oftentimes than not, it's more of like, do you want A or B? Not, can I help you?
Right.
Most times it's going to be like, oh no, it's okay. Because mom is overwhelmed. She can't even think.
Right.
So I'm like, hey, do you want chicken soup or do you want beef stew? Do you want hot chocolate or tea?
Right.
Or do you want coffee or tea? Do you want me to come on this day or this day to help clean your house? So that's usually, maybe because I was at the birth or I'm a doula, maybe people just accept that more for me. But I started where everyone else starts.
Yeah.
I started by asking.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I was just scared, like, oh my gosh, they're going to think I'm bothering them. And you're not bothering them.
No.
Just ask.
Having an infant is overwhelming.
Very.
But kind of what to kind of summarize that a little bit, I think big thing postpartum physically is diastasis
Yeah.
and your pelvic floor. And so doing things to kind of rehab those areas, because especially women within our facilities, they're athletic enough
Yeah.
that they can do some things that maybe they shouldn't be doing. So
Yes.
basically giving your body time to heal, and then mentally leaning on, and that's the benefits of our gyms, is you do have a community built in already.
Yeah.
Like Shannon, who's pulling up right now, I really hope she doesn't walk in the middle of this podcast, but
I
I'm
hope she
prepping
does.
everyone.
Just kidding.
She was texting Raph, who unfortunately broke her ankle, and they're talking about organizing like a meal train to help her
Yes.
family, right? So that stuff all already happens. So if you're someone in one of our gyms and you're going through some of this stuff physically or mentally, like you mentioned, talk to someone who's a member at the gym who's ahead of you is not the right word, but it's what I'm going to use, is ahead of you, right? Like
Yeah.
I got a 2-month-old at home, but this woman in the gym has a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Like she's probably been through this, right?
100%. And just, you know, if somebody twists their ankle
Yeah.
or breaks an arm, we are so quick to go find help,
Yes.
right? When somebody has a baby, why don't we do the same?
Right.
I mean, that's probably my biggest question
Yeah.
is why don't we seek out help?
Yeah.
Why don't we look for resources? It's one you can see, one you can't.
Mhm.
And I think you mentioned that earlier too.
Right.
Right. And so sometimes that starts with just having a conversation or just saying, I need help, or, where can I find this? What can I do here? And then also, hopefully in that space, there are people that are open-minded, or there are people that, or there's a space where you can go, or
Yeah.
environments are created where someone can ask for help. That's the other thing. It's like not everyone feels comfortable and confident enough to do that in certain spaces.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to say is then for our coaches and coaches in general,
Yeah.
you have a unique relationship with the members if
Yeah.
you're doing your job right. And you can, if you know your members well enough, you can start to see,
Yeah.
okay, so-and-so is struggling today, whether it's physically or mentally. Like you might have someone you've had in class for the same class for years, and you can see them start to mentally quit. And
Yeah.
in that moment, that woman probably doesn't need you screaming at her to push harder because of where she is at in her life, but like start to recognize like, okay, hey, I need to step in and support here. And so what I want to do is encourage our staff, but also just coaches in general, because I think our staff does a really good job, even though I'm biased,
Yeah.
is
I agree.
is basically communicating with the members like Dan did,
Yes.
giving what feels good, what can you do, communicating with them that it's like, this is just a season. You continue, you're going to be right back on track.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be okay. And then if they do hit a roadblock that they don't know, reaching out to someone like yourself or someone else that they know to get the answers, I think is super, super important. Because you told your story. That woman came to you, what do I do? You didn't know. It could have been really easy for you to be like, not sure. Good luck with that. Right.
Yeah.
But that's not doing your job to the
No.
fullest. And so, yeah, I want to encourage coaches out there to recognize the unique position you're in
Yep.
and to encourage moms postpartum and also find answers to questions you maybe don't know.
100%. And, I think people are starting to do that. I am excited that people are seeking. And I think there are a lot of influencers out there that are putting information. It's getting a little bit saturated, overwhelming. And now the question is, well, where do I go?
Yeah.
Who do I go to? But it's important to start. And I think also if coaches just show that they care, oftentimes you can tell that there's something up. You may not know exactly what it is,
Right.
but just showing that you care is huge.
Yeah.
Right. And you can see that something's going on. I mean, for example, you have a double under workout or a box jump workout that is programmed into the workout of the day. And you see all these women running to the bathroom. Yeah. It's like, all right, how do we address that?
Yeah.
Right. Or is that something that people are comfortable addressing?
Sure.
Like I said, just because peeing is common doesn't mean it's normal.
Right.
So a lot of it is providing resources, education for the staff and also for the members. And yeah, some of it might sound boring, but you know what? It's not to scare people. I'm like, if this doesn't get addressed at this time in this season of your life, it is going to show up.
Right.
It's going to show up as some sort of dysfunction, right? It's going to show up as peeing yourself in class. Maybe that's embarrassment. It could show up as painful sex. It could show up as esophageal issues, or maybe the next pregnancy and birth will be difficult, or perimenopause and menopause, hormonal issues. We don't want to be a part of that.
Right.
So I always think that if I don't say something, if I don't take responsibility of caring, this could lead to trauma in this person. and not even just in mom, but in children.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not even going to get into generational
Sure.
trauma because it's something called epigenetics. It passes on 14 generations.
Okay.
If we don't work and fix things now, I love genetics, all that stuff. But if I don't take responsibility, if I don't care, it does have long-term trauma and implications. I wish everyone thought that way. Maybe I'm just crazy enough to think that way. Maybe that's what keeps me motivated. And in this space, because to be honest with you, I've thought about leaving the pregnancy postpartum space a few times.
Yeah.
And every time I do, I've retired multiple times from being a
You're like
doula
the
and birth
Michael Jordan
educator.
of doula and birth education.
So many times. I've retired like 2 or 3 times. I was just out of birth 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
If God gives you a gift, I really believe this. If it's a gift, I am able to absorb information and education and explain hard things, I guess. If I was given this gift and I don't share it, that is not honoring God and the gift that he gave me.
Right.
And so every time someone says, I need help, and if I have the answers, it's important that we share that information.
Mhm.
So the fact that you were encouraging that mom that day, you had the gift of encouragement. You told her, hey, you're just in a season. You've been through it with your own life. I think the biggest thing is you don't need to know all of this information. You just need to care.
Yeah. So before we sign off,
Yeah.
is there anything we didn't touch on that you're like, I want to touch on maybe one more thing before we hop off?
I'm not so sure. I think I hit a lot on diastasis, right? That's always a question I get asked the most by people.
Yeah.
I do want to just add a really quick
Go for it.
caveat to that. There is a way that you can check yourself for diastasis.
Okay.
There's a lot of videos online that you can use. Try not to check yourself too much. The reason is because, so we used to say, check yourself every 4 to 6 weeks. The reason is because every time you poke and prod, you're telling your body it's okay to stay there.
Okay.
Right. And yeah, I mean, on average, it takes like 275 days, something crazy, like 7.5, 8 months on average for diastasis to close. So I want to stress that because it is the number one question that I get asked when it comes to pregnancy and postpartum.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're seeing people come back to postpartum fitness like so fast and so soon. So just make sure you ask yourself certain questions like, do I feel good? Is this safe? Am I peeing myself? Is this painful? Like, just be honest with yourself if you're in that postpartum timeframe. And then everyone's able to help people in pregnancy and postpartum. You don't have to be a specialist.
Sure.
Again, you just need to care. So that's
Yeah.
all I think I really have to say about that.
That was it.
So
listen, guys, thanks for listening. I thought this topic was very pertinent to people we see in the gym. If you have any additional questions, Nast_Whitson, you can reach out to her directly. As always, guys, like and subscribe to us on YouTube and Instagram. Give us a 5-star rating on the podcast platform you listen on, and we'll see you at the gym.
Thank you.